Yesterday, facing charges of treason. Karua is a respected human rights advocate and a vocal critic of what she calls democratic backsliding in East Africa. My producer, Tracy Bumgard, caught up with Martha Karua and began by asking her what the reasons were for her deportation.
They did not give any reason. The supervisor who came to announce it to us, she said the orders have come from above, and she didn't say she was not told of any reason, so she cannot. We have to ask higher than her.
This has been going on for quite a while, where the current president, when she first came into power, it seemed that she was doing everything that her predecessor didn't do. But now it just looks like she's just followed straight into his footsteps.
Her true colors have come out because she made a statement herself last evening, saying that invaders had come from other countries without giving names, and that they had come to cause disunity in Tanzania after spoiling their own country. And she said she will not allow such people to enter Tanzania. So it's quite clear that these orders were from her.
Both Uganda and Tanzania's opposition leaders are facing treason charges. Is this a concern for Africa?
Indeed it is, because both countries are headed to elections, Tanzania in October, Uganda in January. In both cases, key opposition leaders are in custody on treason charges. Treason is a political offense because it is meant to protect an incumbent from overthrow by unlawful means. In the case of Tundu Lissu in Tanzania, all he did was to call for no reforms, no elections in a political rally. Boycotting elections cannot be treason. In the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye, abducted from Kenya, rendition to Uganda or illegally, and then framed with charges. I say framed because he traveled to Kenya by air. There is no way you can travel by air and carry weapons. And there is also no way it can be alleged that you are overthrowing a government with 3 pistols. Those were the charges. So you can see these are just reasons to keep opposition leaders under arrest so that the incumbents can go through the elections, sail through the elections literally unopposed. In Uganda, granted, there is another opposition party, NUP, led by Bobi Wine, which may be the largest at the moment, but Bobi Wine's members and his party are under constant persecution, abductions, tortures, and then release. All those things, their headquarters being stormed. So it's constant harassment of opposition figures in an election year in order to predetermine the outcome of those elections.
You've also been very vocal about what is happening in East Africa. Can you tell us more about what is going on in the region and what are you calling for to happen?
I've already said about Uganda and Tanzania. Kenya, there is abduction, execution, extrajudicial execution, and torture and disappearances. And the abductions in Kenya lead to renditions of foreign nationals like Dr. Kizza Besigye and Obed Rusale, like the case of the 4 Turkish nationals who were legitimately in Kenya as refugees, like of a Ethiopian who was doing business in Kenya, Gebra Michael, and many others, including 36 members of Besigye's party who had been abducted and renditioned to Uganda in July last year. So this is now becoming the style of the leadership in East Africa, especially the 3 countries I have named. In Tanzania, an official of Chadema was abducted from a bus and later murdered and dosed in acid.
And that was a leading Kenyan lawyer and the country's former Justice Minister, Martha Karua, speaking to my producer, Tracy Bumgard. And to listen to the full interview, you can find it on our website at channelafrica.co.za.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 15 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Chad's former Prime Minister, Success Masra, was arrested following clashes between farmers from the Ngambaye community and Fulani headsmen after messages on social networks purportedly called on the population to arm themselves against other citizens. Masra is suspected of spreading hate messages on social media. He is a fierce critic of President Mahama Derby. And joining us on the line to discuss this further is Dr. Benjamin Anyangre Aziginataeg, Chief Executive Officer of the Afro-Continental Union Consult. Dr. Aziginataeg, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon and greetings to your audience.
Now, Doc, no one seems to know if Success Masra has been charged with any of the allegations leveled against him. Do you perhaps know if they are still holding him and if the charges have been brought against him?
Currently, what I know is that his supporters are accusing the government of he being kidnapped, and whether he's been released or they even know his whereabouts is something that will unfold and everybody will get to know. But importantly, this boils down to the whole issue of the practice of the new colonial system of democracy. And it is all about leadership. It is all about whether people are going to serve or serving the nation with commitment and to protect and defend the sovereignty of a state. So all what is happening in Chad is the creation of a new colonialism, which really believes...
Go ahead, Doc.
Which really believes in divide and rule as a huge weapon, as a powerful weapon. Once they're able to divide and rule through the political games called democracy, then it is in itself breeds confusion.
Now, Dr. Masra Transformers Party loyalists or party members or leadership say his kidnapping was done by the military officers and they've denounced his detention. Tell us more about why Masra is seen as such a huge threat to the current president, Mohamed Derby.
If you look at the narratives very well, he's somebody who served in the government in the year 2022. And after serving the government, he contested for the presidency. And once contested, of course, the ruling government will sees him as an opponent. And that is why I was telling you earlier on, it boils down to the question of which type of democracy we are implementing. A democracy where somebody is called an opposition against a certain government in itself breeds confusion. breed conflict. And so a government will see the other opponent as a threat. And actually, this democracy that we are practicing, some of them are tied to tribalism and friendship, not because a nation must develop in diversity. In respect of our diverse backgrounds, a nation must devolve. A nation must move from one state to another.
Now, clashes between herders and farmers is a common occurrence in the country. Is this a new phenomenon by the ruling forces in terms of making arrests and the way that Success Masra has been arrested?
Where I am, the line is not so clear and breaking. So
I can hear the noise in the background. But what I was trying to find out from you is the fact that the clashes between the herders and farmers, this is something that is a common occurrence in Chad. Now, the way that the ruling forces have reacted and responded, how should we read into this?
Well, you read into some of these things based on the fact that are they really a threat to the sovereign state? Are they a threat to the sitting government? And so when you look at all these things, that is what informs of a reaction. And these things are things that must be interrogated. They must be interrogated with an open mind. And can people sit together and address these issues? Whether I am from tribe A or B, and whether the government is using its authority and forces available to harass another. These are things that we must interrogate. And like I keep on saying, these are the makings of the bottom line of all these things is the neo-colonial system that we are implementing and practicing.
And now, Dr. Aziganataeg, we're currently seeing a number of arrests of opposition leaders. Tanzania is one case in point where the Chadema leader has been arrested. He's appeared in court and is to appear in court again on the 2nd of June. Now, this is happening across the continent. How important is it for Africa to ensure that law and order reigns without crossing the line?
You see, when you are talking of law and order, it boils down to the question of basic human rights. And if we say we are implementing a democratic system in Africa, which type of democratic system are we practicing? And there are so many definitions to democracy, popular democracy, and so on and so forth. You find out that during the days of Captain Thomas Sankara, there was a system where anybody who wanted to lead a community, the community people came out and an announcement was made that who are those who want to offer themselves as leaders. They come out, if they are 5, they line up, then they ask the people, which of these leaders do you prefer to lead you? If you think it is A, B, C, go and stand behind that person. So by the end of the day, that is a kind of popular democracy, and it is pure. That confines and runs along with the desire and aspiration of the people. And that is what African communities used to be. And currently, with what Captain Thomas Sankara did in those days, I tell you that a traditional system in Ghana called the Bulsa Kingdom, that is exactly the way they go about electing their chiefs in communities.
Well, Dr.
So you
Azinga
can see that
Natayeg, unfortunately, we have run out of time and I have to end this conversation. But thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much.
That is Dr. Benjamin Anyangre, I beg your pardon, Aziga Natayeg, Chief Executive Officer of Africa Continental Union Consult, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 25 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, it's all systems go for the 12th Thabo Mbeki Africa Day lecture taking place on Saturday, the 24th of May in 2025. That's this coming Saturday in the historic city of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The lecture will be the highlight of a week-long series of associated activities held in May, designed to commemorate Africa Day. The 15th Africa Day lecture will focus on reigniting the African Renaissance. And to discuss this further, we have on the line a researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs in UNISA, Advocate Sipho Mandula. Advocate Mandula, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Jumbo Africa, Sister Lulu, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Now, Advocate, what is the significance of Africa Month and Africa Day?
My sister, the importance of Africa Liberation Month dates back to the liberation of Africa in the late 50s, 1958, particularly in Ghana, with Africa Freedom Day, giving us Africa Liberation Day, which is 25th of May. But now in 2025, when you look at the state of the continent, which is the theme for this 15th annual Thabo Mbeki Africa Day lecture, as we speak now, the significance of Africa, Sis Lulu, is that on a daily basis, we always constantly reflect on the living conditions of Africans. And in Africa, we always reflect on the human beings who are living in this planet called, and the continent called Africa, but globally, the impact of Africa. And that's how it is important that when we look at Africa Liberation Day, I've said it many times, and I'm not getting tired, by the way. We still don't have it as a public holiday in most of our African member states. So it is still a facade to still talk about Africa Day and Africa Month when it has been reduced to academic and to gala dinner ceremonies and pompous ceremonies and just messaging on social media about Africa. But we don't get into the context of understanding what are the challenges. And as we speak now, there's a session going on in Tanzania around the blue economy. And somebody said, but why do you call blue economy? Why don't you call it water economy? The piracy of stealing water in Africa and staking fishes in Africa and oil and gas. And we also talk about tourism for African Renaissance. And others were terrorists yesterday. Today they are tourists in the world. Now, when you look at these Afrikaners who just left South Africa. So you see, these are the constant issues when you ask about Africa, for the listeners, and we have to always reflect why the month of May is so important, to always look back and say, beyond Africa Month, is the AU dedicating this month to also harness knowledge amongst the children and the media sector, Sister Lulu, about how the media reflects and report on Africa. Global fact-checking, very important, but what about Africa fact-checking? Are we checking all the news that we are now consuming about this beautiful continent?
Advocate, the lecture is taking place in Tanzania. You find that people will be questioning and asking why, in particular, Tanzania. What is it about the Tanzania that makes it symbolic for this year's lecture?
I think there are two names that will come to mind. It's Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Benjamin Mkapa. They are both late. Now, how it underscores that many liberation movements from South Africa, whether the ANC, PAC, ASAPO, their groundings were in Tanzania. So the Solomon Mahlangu Institute that is in the school now, in the Open Dar es Salaam University, is very important. So I think the key issue that will come out is the state of the continent where you are. So you might not define it from Tanzania alone. You might say, in Sudan, what is the state of Sudan? What is the state of Zambia? What is the state of Azania today? So it's very important how this lecture is being positioned to understand the influence and the impact of the spirit of the African unity, the spirit of what I said earlier, owning our natural resources. Because one challenge we have, Sister Lulu, that we should not run away from, we still don't own our natural resources in Africa. And that's why we find ourselves in this war zone and also in this threat of being erased in the pages of history, and we still have to go to the US and explain ourselves all the time.
Advocate Mandula, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Asante sana.
That's a researcher at Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs in UNISA, Advocate Sipho Mandula, joining us on the line. It is 12:30, and our news headlines up next with Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Making headlines, American conservative commentator Joel Pollack says representatives of South Africa's Government of National Unity have headed to the US with the wrong attitude. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is leading a delegation to the US, arrived in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has warned activists from neighboring Kenya that she will not allow them to meddle in her country's affairs and cause chaos. Suluhu Hassan's comments follow the deportation of prominent Kenyan lawyers and rights campaigners, preventing them from attending the court case of an opposition leader charged with treason. And finally, an investigation is underway to establish the identities of at least 58 unidentified corpses that have been found in a hospital in Libya's capital, Tripoli. The hospital was under the control of a militia whose leader, Chief Abdul Ghani Kikli, was killed last week. I will have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you to Jwalani Tulongwepe with our news headlines. And we say good afternoon to Fikile Lingwati with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Lulu. We kick off with football news. The Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations champions, Amajita, have arrived home from Egypt to a hero's welcome. Amajita touched down at OR Tambo International Airport in the morning, carrying the winner's trophy. Multitudes of football fans welcomed the team with a song. Amajita coach Raymond Mdaga says preparing thoroughly for the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Chile later this year and avoiding mistakes that could have derailed their plans for the AFCON Under-20 tournament are among his priorities. Amajita went to the AFCON without having played a single international friendly against one of the qualified teams, something Mdaga wants to avoid for the World Cup.
We are going to the meeting, I think, around 26, 27 for a draw and a workshop, and then we're coming back. We'll know exactly where we are. But in essence, we look at, we always have to look at the calendar at home. We always also need to look at the FIFA calendar, because much as we're having good relationship with the teams, but you must also understand and squeeze yourself where it allows us to not have squabbles and so on. So
Mdaga had earlier spoken about having 80% of his squad for the World Cup in Chile already, and he's now clarified that this percentage includes the players who were in part of this tournament, including Chandre Campbell and Mbegezeli Mbogazi.
When I say 80%, I think they are included, because these are the three players that we'll always talk about. Aseko was here, he just got injured. Chandre, we understand the issue. Mbegezeli, same, and Mabena, same. So the fortunate thing is these players, we have been with them. You remember, we started the camp, we started everything with them. So we don't even have a challenge. We are fine with them, unless if anything comes up. So hence, when we talk about the 80%, honestly, we're talking about the players that we started the first camp in March with them.
Morocco under-20 coach Mohamed Wabi says he's struggling to come to terms with his side's 1-0 defeat to South Africa in the final of the Total Energies CAF under-20 AFCON Egypt 2025, insisting the Atlas clubs were the dominant side and deserved more. The North Africans fell to a second-half strike from Khomole Mokekana at the Cairo International Stadium on Sunday, bringing an end to their unbeaten run and dashing hopes of clinching a rare continental treble across age categories. Now on to golf news. Scottie Scheffler is favoured to knock off the third leg of his quest for the career Grand Slam at next month's US Open. Fresh off claiming his first Wanamaker trophy at the PGA Championship, which added to Scheffler's pair of Masters green jackets, he was installed as the consensus favourite to win the 2025 US Open. Let's end with tennis news. Arthur Ashe Stadium, the US Open Showcase Court, is said to be expanded as part of an $800 million renovation project at Flushing Meadows. The USTA has described the proposed work at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center as the largest single investment in US Open history. It includes a plan to increase by about 2,000 the capacity of Arthur Ashe Stadium, which currently holds 23,771 and is the largest tennis arena in the world. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figure Ngwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
We say good afternoon to Nosipho Zuma with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. In your business news, the SAWA, Nigeria's independent oil producer Renaissance Africa Energy, has confirmed that an illegal connection on its Okadaya Ramwekbe pipeline at Oshika community in the Coastal River State caused a spill. The company said it was immediately isolating the pipeline and stopping production to minimize the potential environmental impact. Nhlanhla Mahlangu has more.
Monday's oil spill marks the second incident this month on the Renaissance Africa Energy pipeline and the third across its operations. The company says it has informed government regulators and is coordinating a mandatory joint investigation with them. It says the probe will determine the cause and the impact of the incident. The company, which now owns former Shell Nigeria onshore assets, halted productions on the line feeding from Trans-Niger oil pipeline, a crucial artery transporting crude from onshore fields to the Boni export terminal last Friday.
Total Energy's chief executive, Patrick Boyane, says that the company will seek Mozambique's approval to lift a force majeure declaration on its $20 billion liquefied natural gas project there and resume construction by mid-summer. Boyane says that the project has been covered by force majeure since 2021 following insurgent attacks. Sisi Sekhalo has more.
Total Energies declared force majeure on its LNG project in Mozambique because of a major raid by Islamist terrorists against the town of Palma. The company says the security situation has now improved, hence it is seeking to have the force majeure lifted. It says it will be up to the government of Mozambique to approve lifting of this force majeure. The Mozambique LNG project, which is budgeted at $20 billion, began with the discovery of over 65 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the Rovuma Basin.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the United States this week for a high-stakes meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. Economist Miyelani Mukabela says the engagement is of strategic importance given the fact that the U.S. is the fourth largest international investor in South Africa with more than 600 companies in different sectors in the country.
United States is the biggest investor as well in technology in South Africa, looking at big companies like your Microsoft and Google. They are local and they are employing a lot of people as well. So it is critical to have a strategic discussion with such a president, and we clarify the things that probably might have went wrong. But the South African delegation as well is expected to apply wisdom and knowledge in negotiating or signaling with the United States.
Africa's second largest mobile operator, the Vodacom Group, says it is pursuing partnerships for joint fiber ventures as it looks to accelerate the rollout of high-speed broadband coverage across its markets. Now, this as the voice market continues to slow in parts of the continent, including South Africa. Telecoms companies such as Vodacom and rivals MTN and Airtel Africa have doubled down on high-speed internet, an area dominated by fiber companies such as Dark Fiber Africa and Avomutel in South Africa. Vodacom is majority owned by UK-based Vodafone and has 211.3 million mobile network customers across 8 African countries. Infrastructure and energy are among the issues that France's President Emmanuel Macron is expected to discuss with Vietnam's leaders next week during a state visit to the former colony. Officials say dozens of deals are being prepared and could be signed, and the first trip by a French president to Vietnam in nearly a decade. The visit is part of a larger tour of Southeast Asia. Macron is set to arrive in Hanoi on May 25th, move to Indonesia on May 27th, and finish in Singapore, where he will speak at the annual Shangri-La Dialogue on May the 30th. Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,602 naira 15. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 51. And in Zambia, it's 26 kwacha 91. The biggest countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 65. Russia is 80 rubles 3. India is 85 rupees 42. China at 7 yuan 21. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 05. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,233 and platinum at $1,007 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.46 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nusi Pozuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Thank you to Nosipo Zuma with our business news. It is 12:43 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, in commemoration of Africa Day, the Frederick Norman Foundation and Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation are hosting a roundtable discussion on reparations as a vital element of human rights, justice and economic prosperity. The event is exploring the human rights dimensions of historical redress, structural inequality and healing from colonial and racial injustice in order to foster better economic relations between Africa and Europe. Our Channel Africa's reporter, Michael Mbewe, is on this story, and he now joins us on the line. Michael, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to our African listeners and the rest of the world, the globe. Lulu.
Now, Michael, what has been the highlight of the discussion so far?
Well, Lulu, it's a high-level event here at the Frederick Naumann Foundation in Johannesburg, South Africa, with participants coming from the African Union, ECOSOC, ambassadors from African and Caribbean countries, leading civil society organizations, working in reparations and transformational justice. So it's more about, highlighting the importance of, asking the colonial powers to give back to what they stole during, the slavery times in Africa. So, but I'm not alone here, Lulu. I'm with Mr. Johannes Ortman, who is coming from the Nama Traditional Leaders Association in Namibia. You recall, between 1904 and 1908, Lulu, Germany committed genocide against the Herero, Mbanderu, and Nama people in the colony of Southwest Africa, presently Namibia. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. We are live on Channel Africa of the SABC. Your presence here and the importance of this gathering.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yeah, I think it's a very important gathering for us to come and amplify our voice. As you have rightly in your introduction said, that the Germany committed genocide against the Nama and the Herero people as from officially 1904, 1908, but it already has started in 1893. So we are here to raise our voice and to make sure that Africa is hearing us. There's the African Union representatives here in ECOSOC, people that is really looking after the interests of reparations for the African Union side for the theme of African Union this year, reparations for African people and people from African descent. And more specific for this event is called From Rhetoric to Action, that we are not just going to talk anymore, but we are going to action.
Indeed. And some of the voices that have been heard there were alluding to the fact that you also have Caribbeans from Jamaica who are also part of this. But you also have the Africans from the West, East, and South as well. Everybody talking about the common cause. But unity will really help this movement to grow and then also have one voice. But from the Namibian perspective, what are you calling for?
Yes, obviously we are calling for, number one, justice for our ancestors that has been brutally murdered. The Germans have came. They have taken the people's land, they have taken their belongings, and they have wiped out almost 50 to 80% of the Nama and the Herero people. Just on that wiping out, it has made us marginally short to have a voice today in the democratic political situation where we are less in numbers, so we cannot get the numbers to go into government or to lead in government. That is one. Secondly is that the wealth that the Germans and the Europeans have created, by coming and stealing the land, taking the belongings, wiping out our people, So with that, we are asking, number one, for justice. And then based on that, we are asking for reparations. Reparations in terms of the land that was lost, the belongings, the trauma, the generational trauma that is still going on today. Today, the Nama and Herero people mainly doesn't have land. They don't have a place to call home. The new governments that we have elected, and I think it's Germany, in South Africa, we have the same issue now. The issue of ancestral land after we gain independence and democratic disposition has never been discussed. The land has never go back to the people. And, that is a big issue for all of us, because without land, you cannot be, the Germans, the whites, they came and they take land. And today, that value of that land is in, billions, and this is how they have created their wealth. So we are asking for justice, we are asking for reparations, and we don't ask for a favor from them. We ask from what they have taken from us and what our people have lost and our ancestors have lost. So we are here to amplify our voice. We are here to come together with our other African and sisters, brothers, to join a movement, a solitary movement, that we should come together and fight for reparations for the African people and the people of the African descent. My brother, I can tell you that Germany now has issued a half-hearted apology, saying we are acknowledging that we have committed against a number of our Herero people genocide from today's perspective. Now, but that is telling you that they were within their rights when they were killing our people, wiping out our people in 1904 to 1900. They had the legal right. However, we are saying that he should acknowledge that they have committed genocide at that time to our people. And with that, they will have a legal responsibility. But with this changing of words, they are avoiding the legal responsibility and half-heartedly they are issuing a development aid package, not a reparation package. And this is why we are here to bring that out and tell our African brothers, this is our situation. Let's work together. Let's find this African reparations movement and, in fact, African people from African descent, a movement with whom we can take on this issue of reparation, slavery, all kinds of brutality that was happening against the African people by those Germans, those Europeans, the Americans, these people have to do right to our African brothers and sisters.
So in South Africa, there's a conversation that has ignited about land compensation without, land redress without compensation. Something that has also caused a fracas between South Africa and the U.S. What should we do when we are now maybe facing a resistance from others that might not, love this movement or maybe this idea of reparations?
I was about to make a comment and then I have to come here. What everybody is forgetting is the U.S., the Europe, they are built on African wealth. If you look at Belgium, if you look at France, that is the wealth of DRC. That is the wealth of West Africa. Same in Southern Africa. Today, Germany, their wealth, they created the first bank, German African Southwest Africa Bank. The diamonds they took out, and there's a company called Vurman in Namibia, and I think now it's closing. But those guys were directly benefiting from the genocide because what they were doing, they were a preferred business partner of the German imperial government. So they are the ones who were shipping in the soldiers and the ammunition, the weapons, and they got paid based on the slave labor because they have cheap labor here, or they were killing people. People has to work them to death, so they created their wealth on that. So all what we are asking is through reparations is we want our wealth back. And we should be equal partners, and with that justice will come. And this is what we are asking. And now they say, now we have to give you a development aid. We don't want development aid. We just want what they have taken back from us. Now, on the issue of the land, I think our democratic governments have lost our opportunity. This issue of land should have been already addressed at the dawn in South Africa in 1994. It should have been addressed. Same in Namibia in 1990. Because the fight for independence and for freedom in South Africa, also for democracy, was about land. But they didn't discuss because all this was negotiated agreements for democracy for our people. And now people are standing up. Now that people are standing up, everybody have a say. But where were they when these people were being killed? Where were they when these people were has been losing their land? People have been chased out. Look at the Western Cape. If you go into Stellenbosch area, those beautiful area, they own the land, the big farms. Now you need to be well-connected black guy with billions of dollars for you to own that land. Well, what about you and me, my brother? What about our kids? What about the generations to come? So this is what we are saying is that, this false narrative that is coming from the U.S., that genocide is committed, people are saying this. They have no right. That's an internal South African issue because South Africa wants to get right what they didn't do right. They want to give the land back to people. Now, Why is another sovereign country come and tell you? Now, if Trump say, I'm going to issue an executive order on this and this, does any leader come and tell him you are wrong and create that? So these African leaders also have to be strong enough and tell the rest of the world that this is not correct. And that's why at AU level, our African head of states, they must be more stronger. Look at what Traoré is doing in Burkina Faso. They must be more stronger and stand firm on their beliefs and purpose, because we have the resources here. They will need to come for our resources.
So, in closing, sir, how has the government been responsive? Because I see you're coming from the traditional leaders. But now, with you working with the government, how is the government responding to this discourse in a nutshell?
I think in a nutshell, the government, even though they have been negotiating, they have missed some fundamental things. They go and negotiate bilateral discussions where they have to discuss reparations.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, they look at this thing from a diplomatic point of view. But they are missing the ball that this is people that has been killed. And if you talk about genocide, and if you talk about reparations, you need to go and sit down with the people who has directly been affected by this. And that is an international norm.
No, we'll leave it there for now, sir. Thank you so much. I see the engagements continue inside, and then maybe they might need you. But overall, very important information that I've shared with you, with us here on Channel Africa on Namibia. Lulu, it's back to you in studio. We were speaking to Mr. Johannes Ottman, who is a NAMA Traditional Leaders Association from Namibia. Lulu.
Well, thank you, Michael, for that very interesting discussion and points that were made from your guest there. That is Michael Mbewe, our reporter at Channel Africa, who is at the Frederick Norman Foundation and Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. And they are commemorating Africa Day. And this is where there is a high-level event taking place with delegations from across the African continent and the globe. You are listening to Africa Update, coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa, and we're coming to you from an African Renaissance. It is 12:57 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, today, Africa Update asks, Chad's former Prime Minister Success Masra arrested after violent clashes reportedly sparked by ethnic tensions and incitement on social media. Now, the question is, in your view, should political leaders be held accountable for ethnic tensions that escalate under their leadership? Share your thoughts or your views on WhatsApp, and the number is +27 63 406 9126. That's +27 63 406 9126. And we say good afternoon to the Upside team, and it is Tebogo Lekuleni joining us with an update of what is coming up today on the Upside. Hello, and how are you?
Hello, Lulu. I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
So Nigeria will be sending one of their films to the Cannes Film Festival this year to celebrate African culture. And how apt is that, since we are still in Africa, or Africa Month?
Africa Month,
and
yes.
What a time for African producers, movie creators or film directors to be having their products and their work displayed at the Cannes Festival. Remember the Chibok girls that were kidnapped?
Yes, I remember that.
So now we get to hear from the mothers. This documentary, this film, features the mothers, their journeys, what they went through. and that's going to be on display at the Cannes Festival, and in celebration of African culture. And that's all coming up this afternoon on The Upside. As always, fantastic banter and conversations with Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
I can imagine with that Chibok story, some of those girls were never found, and some are set to have kids, and it's really a heart-wrenching story.
Can you imagine what the mothers were going through, and having to then relive this for the sake of this film, this documentary? It must have been quite the emotional roller coaster.
That's The Upside, coming up at the top of the hour with Debohole Kuleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. And for myself, Lulu Gaboo and the Africa Update team, that's producer Tracy Bumgard, our technical operator Katu Madava, and social media Ntsako Mashaba. It's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good day. American conservative commentator Joel Pollak says representatives of South Africa's Government of National Unity have headed to the US with the wrong attitude. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is leading a delegation to the US, arrived in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Ramaphosa and his US counterpart Donald Trump are scheduled to meet at the White House tomorrow. Relations between the two countries are strained after Trump signed an executive order in which he alleged that white Afrikaners faced a genocide in South Africa. Pollak believes Ramaphosa's delegation may focus on disputing Trump's claims.
If you look at the text of the executive order that Trump actually issued, it doesn't even mention genocide. It talks about the areas of policy disagreement quite clearly and explicitly. And that's what South Africa's representatives don't want to discuss. They don't want to discuss the Expropriation Act. They don't want to discuss the International Court of Justice case against Israel, which puts South Africa squarely on the side of Hamas. They don't want to discuss racial discrimination in hiring in South Africa and in business, which is keeping investors from the United States out of South Africa. So they actually don't want to discuss anything that Trump has explicitly said in writing he has a problem with. So I don't think this is going to go very well.
Meanwhile, it's unclear whether South Africa's Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, will succumb to Solidarity Union's demand for an apology over her allegation that it's spreading misinformation. The union has launched legal action against Ntshavheni for making the allegations in a media statement in March. The minister accused Solidarity and lobby group AfriForum of conducting a misinformation and disinformation campaign during their joint visit to the US in February. The minister is left with 6 days in which to apologize and retract his statement or face further legal action. Solidarity's Deputy CEO Anton van der Bijl.
There's some criticism to the fact that we are busy with the misinformation campaign, and then when we ask where's the misinformation, they tell us no, we don't know, but don't tell that to the international community. That's not good for South Africa. So the question is, can we speak to international communities regarding what's happening in South Africa, and is that called misinformation? No, it's most certainly not. We can, as a civil organization, talk to international role players and hope for a better South Africa, and to the critics, show us the facts where we state that any misinformation